Okay. So welcome everyone to the first Friday event for February 2023. And today we're talking about recruitment and recruitment in the current challenging economic climate. Welcome to all the new people that we've got here today. Lovely to see lots of new faces. For those of you who haven't been here before, this is the first Friday event. It's designed as a learning opportunity and an opportunity for people to come together from the franchise sector and network. And we hold these once a month, generally on the first Friday, and it's all about knowledge and information sharing. So today our guests are Ed Purnell from The Franchised and Adam Lovelock from Coconut Creatives. And we've managed to get them both together this afternoon to talk to us about recruitment in 2023. So I think, Ed, you're going to start the session, you're going to lead, and then over to, sorry, Adam, I think you're going to start the session, and then over to Ed. So over to you, Adam.
Cool, thank you. You got me worried then. I'm just a warm-up act. Ed's got his guitar there. I'm expecting big things.
I knew you was going to say that. I've got a lot to live up to, I'm sure.
I've been planning that one all week. Cool. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes. Fantastic. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the invite. So yeah, I'm just going to speak a little bit around what we kind of sense is the kind of franchise recruitment landscape at the moment and for 2023. To give you a bit of background, at Coconut, we're a marketing agency that work purely in the franchise sector. We work with clients either to help them with their franchise recruitment marketing, or we work with a lot of clients on their digital marketing for their core business as well and their franchise network. We're currently retained by about 15 brands in the UK for franchise recruitment marketing. So I have a pretty good idea, and that's across obviously a range of different sectors. So you have a pretty good sense of how people are finding things at the moment, and also going to run through some data to have a look at that as well. So the current conditions. So one thing that I always look at, and I regularly do kind of videos on LinkedIn around this as well, is just looking at the Google Trends data around search traffic of people looking around the kind of key franchise search terms. My kind of view is that if someone's looking to buy a franchise, they're likely to turn to Google on multiple occasions on that kind of research and decision-making journey. So looking at the search traffic at the moment, this is over the last 12 months. And I think this kind of graph, I don't worry too much about the kind of what the figures are on either side. It's just kind of checking out the lines really. But if you looked at this graph pre-pandemic, what you would have typically seen, and I think anyone that's been in franchising long enough knows that there was always a kind of pattern around January, February were really big months for lead flow for franchise recruitment, maybe then quieting down, summer really kind of quieting down, then September, October, there was a big influx of leads again, then quieting down towards the Christmas period, and then all come back again in January. I think that's still true to an extent, but the sense is actually since the pandemic, those ups and downs are slightly less. And what we're finding now is things are a lot more steady. Those seasonal trends are not quite like they used to be. This January, the traffic was definitely up on what it was the back end of last year. But going back pre-pandemic, it used to be 3 to 4 times higher than what we saw in December. Now it was probably only double what we saw in December. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's less traffic round overall, but I'll come to that in a second. But certainly those kind of trends of when people are looking at franchises has changed slightly. If we take the traffic and look over a 5-year period, I think the reality is that COVID hasn't, or the pandemic hasn't overall reduced the traffic. As you can kind of see here, this goes back to 2018. And there was a bit of a slump during 2020 as would be expected, but actually it didn't kind of affect things in a major way in terms of people searching around franchise opportunities. However, if you look back since Google Records started, so this is going right away back to 2004, where we can see the pattern. As you can see, overall search traffic around franchising massively increased after this probably end of 2009. So the last recession, coming out of that for a couple of years, there was real interest around franchising, lots of search traffic. You can see this for 2 or 3 year period, 2009, 10. And then ever since then, it's been on a gradual decline. And the reality is that although the search traffic around at the moment looks really low, it was like that before the pandemic. There's been so much uncertainty, be it general elections, Brexit, and every time there is some sort of uncertainty, if you plot that on these kind of graphs, you can see the interest in franchising go down. So the reality is at the moment, we're in a position where there's still lots of uncertainty around. It's incredibly likely we're going to go into a recession this year. I don't think anything in 2023 is going to massively change this graph. I think we're in a pattern over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and I think it's going to need something pretty major to come out of that. And it could be the recession is something which longer term helps this traffic to bounce back. But as we can see from 2008, it actually took a year after the recession for the interest in franchising to really come through. So what that kind of means for trends that I think in 2023, I think overall franchise recruitment is going to be tough. And we were just talking quickly before, when you speak to brands, some brands are still bucking this trend. It's certainly not impossible. Many are still succeeding. There's still lots of franchisees being recruited. But overall, the amount of people looking at franchising and searching for franchising and the leads you generate through the traditional routes that you always have done is going to be pretty tough. And the way I kind of look at it, if franchise recruitment has been tough in the last couple of years, so since the pandemic, if you haven't recruited on the levels you did prior to the pandemic, I don't think anything's going to change in 2023. So if over the last couple of years, you haven't hit the targets of what you're looking at from a franchise recruitment perspective, to get better results in 2023, it's definitely going to be a case of changing strategy and looking at other ways to create interest in the franchise, which we'll go through quickly in a minute. I think another trend that we're definitely seeing, and speaking to franchisors, I think is the case, and this probably it's nothing to do with the pandemic. I think it's much more down to consumer behavior, but taking inquiry through your recruitment process will be harder than ever. Actually getting to engage with people, getting to speak to people is one of the toughest things. So even if you're generating lots and lots of leads, taking that inquiry through the process to making them a real candidate for the franchise is as hard as it's ever been. And again, I'll go through some tips for that shortly. There are a few probably exceptions to this kind of rule. I think second household income franchise opportunities are less impacted by the current conditions. So that would be things like the children's sector or any opportunity where it's the second household income. I think that they're not as affected by the current conditions as first household income opportunities. I think the big multi-unit operators in the QSR, food, drink sector, again, I think they're less affected. I think those guys, there's so much consolidation through the pandemic. A lot of those guys really grew through the pandemic. I think, again, they're unaffected and probably are going to continue to grow through 2023 as well. And of course, underpinning all of this as well is that competition is growing. If there's less traffic around at the moment looking for a franchise, there's certainly more franchisors around now than there was pre-pandemic. Lots of businesses turned to franchising during the pandemic. We're seeing lots of new franchise opportunities coming to market now. So the competition for franchisees is growing all the time. And probably where we're at, and I'm going to go into a bit more detail on this, is that the traditional franchise channel, so the ways that lots of franchise brands over the last 10 years have grown their franchise and always worked, are probably no longer going to be enough if you've got really ambitious plans to grow the franchise over the next year or two. So the way I always like to kind of define this from a recruitment point of view, it's a tale of two ponds. So when looking for inquiries for your franchise opportunities, there are two ponds that you can fish in when looking for inquiries. The first pond are the people that are currently looking for a franchise. So they're actively made the decision they're going to look to buy a franchise, and they're out searching the market, reviewing opportunities. They're going to buy a franchise. They're just trying to choose what franchise opportunity is going to be correct for them. The second pond of people are people who fit your profile. So they fit the profile of what you feel is a perfect franchisee, but they're not currently looking at a franchise. So this is all activities you could do from a marketing point of view that are people not looking at a franchise. So breaking these down in a little bit more detail, those that are currently looking for a franchise. So this is all the activities like franchise listing sites, so things like Franchise Direct, Google Ads, because obviously you can make sure that if someone's searching for certain keywords like franchise opportunities, you can show your opportunity, franchise publications, franchise shows, anything else where people are actively looking for a franchise. Now, the key to this is that you can't control the size of that pond. We've just kind of shown from the data that actually probably over time, the pond of people looking at franchise opportunities at this particular point is coming down. So that pond, I don't think is going to massively grow over the next year. And actually the amount of people fishing in the pond is growing. So it's getting more competitive and there isn't tons of people there. The second pond, which I don't think loads and loads of franchisors focus on, I still think speaking to a lot of franchisors who have historically grown their franchise through this pond here, the pond of people currently looking for a franchise, are still trying to fish in that pond alone. And they're finding over the last couple of years that they're not hitting their targets, lead flow's going down, it's harder to recruit people, and they're still only fishing in this pond. The second pond, so this is people who fit the profile, ways that you can reach bigger audiences of people, but they're not looking at franchising. So this could be social media advertising, Facebook ads, for example. I know lots of franchisors have tried social media advertising and it works brilliantly in certain sectors like the children's activity sector. I speak to lots of franchisors who say it doesn't work, but when I've reviewed what they've done, typically it's down to messaging, which we're going to go into in a little bit more detail. It could be industry press. So it could be that there's a particular profession that you know make great franchisors and you may try and build an awareness of your opportunity in that press. It could be PR. It could be current customers. This is a really underutilized tactic, I think, in the franchise sector. If your product, if your actual customers of the business fit the profile of the kind of people that make great franchisees, are you doing enough to make sure that every single one of your customers knows that you are a franchise opportunity? It's a big thing, but we work with some networks where actually their customers are perfect profile franchisees, but 90% of their customers don't realize it's a franchise opportunity. And I think when conditions are tough, that's the first place people should be looking. So are you doing enough around there as well? But with this second pond of people, the only way that you can ever create interest in your franchise opportunity is understanding that the messaging and the marketing message has to be completely different to the messaging that you would have when you're targeting people who are already looking at a franchise. People that are already looking at a franchise probably have the investment level. They've decided they want to run their own business. They probably have a certain understanding of franchising. These people here in this second pond may never have heard of franchising. They may still be in a job that they absolutely loved and never thought about running their own business. So the messaging can't be the same. What works for you on one pond is definitely not going to work in this pond. So when creating your own pond, it takes a lot of work. The people that you're targeting, there's no intent or awareness around franchising. You are actually going to have to try and create that. The lead time will be longer. So it's worth understanding that if this is something you would commit to, but a lead of someone already looking at a franchise has probably already gone down the first couple of steps. Anyone that's not looking at a franchise, you're going to have to educate them probably on quite a lot of this. However, if you do create your own pond, you open up a much bigger audience and you're not so reliant upon that pond of people who are interested purely in franchising. Now, there are some brands out there that have always had to do this. So the best example I can kind of think of is that we worked with a HR franchise, and the HR franchise couldn't just go to the general franchise world to find people interested in franchising, because to become a franchisee of theirs, you had to be HR qualified or had a certain amount of years as a HR professional. So actually they had to be laser focused on targeting HR professionals that weren't looking at franchising. And that kind of narrowed down where they could look. There were certain ways they could target HR professionals on LinkedIn, but a lot of what they did was targeting people through the HR magazines and publications. So there's lots of franchise brands that have grown by always doing this type of activity. However, the messaging, as I said earlier, has to be the absolute key. So looking a bit at the messaging, if you are looking to target this kind of secondary pond, which I think is going to be more important in 2023, you have to get to the prospect's pain point really, really quickly. Now, I think you have to get to your prospect's pain point really quickly, whatever you're doing from a marketing point of view. But if you're targeting people that have no prior understanding, you have to assume no prior understanding about franchising. You have to get to the pain point really quickly. Now, the HR company that we worked with, just as an example, they really started to understand people in the HR profession that would make good franchisees. But more importantly, they understood the pain points that the people would have. And the pain point that they identified was that their perfect franchisee was a HR professional that had been working 10 or 15 years in HR, had got themselves to kind of managerial level in a HR department, but there was a director above them. And the director was probably still not going to retire for 20 years. And there was a ceiling on where they could go in their career. So they got really specific with the messaging. They knew that actually the people they're targeting, the pain point was that they'd hit a kind of ceiling in their career. They couldn't go any further. And actually their opportunity allowed them to build their own business and take a bit more control about their future as well. So they got very, very specific about the pain point. And part of doing this, I think that's really important, is actually sell the franchise opportunity second. So a lot of the franchise marketing that I see is people really trying to sell at the very start of advertising the franchise opportunity. But I always think of the kind of term sell the sizzle and not the sausage. And I think that's really important, this kind of thing. I think rather than trying to sell all the detail about your opportunity, it's much more important to sell, I'm going to go a couple of slides on actually, but more about how you change lives, because ultimately as a franchisor, that's what you do. That's what brings people into the network. Every franchisor is changing lives all the time. And actually at that very first point of trying to attract people into your opportunity, they're not particularly interested in the training that you provide them and the marketing and the cost of the franchise and all the support they're going to get. That is massively important, of course, but that's massively important maybe the second or third time you speak to them. What people really want to know, or how you're really going to attract these kind of people in there, is really trying to market on the fact that you change people's lives. So again, looking at the HR example, they very much went with the opportunity of like, we can unstick your career. We can take you away from this block that you found in your career and we can change your life and you can build the career that you're looking for. Part of this, I think, is about not being vanilla as well. I think there's a real danger when advertising your franchise that people try to appeal to absolutely everyone. So we've got this franchise opportunity and I want everyone to be interested in it, which is fine. But the reality is that it's probably a very small segment of people that will be, or you want to be interested in your franchise. So don't worry about trying to appeal to everyone. Don't try to be too vanilla with your messaging. Try and really focus in on the prospect and their pain points. Of course, part of that is to make sure you use lots of real franchisee stories, photos, videos. We run thousands of landing pages for franchise recruitment, and we've tried everything from colors of buttons to headlines to how much text is on a page. But the only thing that makes a tangible difference is a picture of a happy, smiling franchisee. So if you haven't got lots of happy, smiling franchisees across all of your franchise marketing literature, if you haven't got lots of brilliant videos of franchisees doing what they do, that's definitely the first place to start. I always think of it that if I was looking at a business opportunity, one of the things above anything else that I'd want to know is what would I be doing every day if I invested in that franchise? And that's where something like a video going in and following a franchisee around for a day, showing the day in the life of a franchisee. Think how powerful that is right at the start of someone's journey when they think they might have an interest. If you can kind of offer a window to show someone what their life will be like. We've done some day in their life videos where the franchisee goes for a dog walk every morning at 11 o'clock. So they, et cetera, you follow them around on the dog walk and they talk about how they never had an opportunity to do this when they were in employment. Or it could be that they go and pick the kids up every day, but they never had the opportunity to do it. That's what a typical day in a life can be. And through video and really trying to promote that through your marketing will make a massive difference. A big thing as well, and Ed may kind of touch on this as well, but I do think, and I personally don't think we see this enough in franchising, but to create an interest in franchising and to build that kind of trust someone needs to enter your process and go through the process, I think personal brand is so important. And I don't think there's enough franchisors out there currently really focus on building their own personal brand and building an awareness out there of who they are, what they're about, their values, etc. And actually the franchise opportunity very often is kind of hidden behind the corporate brand. Now, the corporate brand is clearly absolutely vital when it comes to someone investing in the franchise. So I'm not for 1 minute saying it's not, but I think every franchisor could be doing a lot more to promote their own personal brand, because ultimately a franchisee is going to buy from you. They're not going to buy from your brand. They're going to invest into your brand, but they're going to buy from you. So I think a focus on personal branding is massively important. And I don't think there's enough people doing that at the moment. So the final thing just to look at is the recruitment process. I think that this is where I see a lot of franchisors still generating lots of inquiries, but a lot of feedback we have a lot of the time is that it's so hard to get through to people. People are leaving wrong phone numbers. I only speak to 1 out of every 10 leads, etc., etc. And I think there's a few things which probably everyone could look at to try and help this. Firstly, I think there does feel like there's a massive reliance upon automation when it comes to franchise recruitment processes now. And there's certainly nothing wrong with this. I think having an email sequence in place, so a lead comes in and you send them 7 emails over 5 weeks, whatever you have set up. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I think there's a massive reliance upon that within a lot of franchise networks. And I think the days of email chains like that being highly effective are probably on their way out. I think the reality is that the amount of people that engage with those type of email communications probably becomes less and less every single year. The vast majority of the inquiries you get for your franchise will be personal email addresses, and all of us work. I know myself, I check my work email all the time. My personal email address, I only check when I know I've received an email I need to go and find. So if you're relying on personal email addresses being the thing which is going to engage your contacts or the leads when they come in, I don't think it's going to work. Experience now is absolutely everything. So this is something which I think is probably a wider discussion, probably for another time, but how can you create a better experience with someone when they enter your process, when they enter the franchise process? Now, I think we could probably all go and explore other sectors to try and find out what other businesses are doing, but there's some really cool technology out there, which is only going to enhance over the next few years. If you look at some big recruitment companies, or you look at some of the big blue chip businesses, what they're doing when people enter their recruitment processes, staff recruitment processes, that is, they're using VR, they're using AR, they're using a range of different technologies to get people more engaged. I'm not saying that's something you should be doing, but I think it's something that's going to disrupt the kind of way franchisors recruit people over the coming years. But even simple things, a good example I had was that my wife a few years ago was looking to change career. So I said to her, why don't you go on Franchise Direct and have a look around all the franchise opportunities? And she picked 7 or 8, submitted, and instantly went into 7 or 8 people's franchise recruitment process. And after a day of having 7 or 8 people's email follow-up sequences and 7 and 8 people trying to call her mobile, completely unsubscribed from them all, shut her phone down and wouldn't answer any telephone calls, because suddenly she's got 7 people chasing her up. But one of the franchises actually sent through a physical brochure, posted through a physical brochure with a little compliment slip saying, thank you very much for your inquiry, here's our brochure, etc., etc. Now, I got in from work that day, sat down at a table, and this particular brochure was just on the table. And I just thought, how powerful is that? Like so many franchises I know are completely reliant upon sending everything through via email, which are probably deleted. Yet we've got this physical franchise brochure on our table. I could see it as another person who would be involved in the decision-making process. I had a look through it. I think we spoke about that particular franchise over dinner, even though I wasn't part of any of that kind of submitting the things. So something as simple as actually just sending a physical brochure and a compliment slip made a massive difference. Now, she didn't invest in the franchise, unfortunately, but we did move house a couple of years ago, and that brochure was still on our bookcase. It was still actually in the house. So I didn't know the other franchises that she actually submitted inquiries to, but I did know that one, and I thought that was really powerful. So think of ways or things you could do to try and really help the experience when someone becomes an inquiry. On top of that, we were talking about technology, but I do think it's massively important. I think this was lost a bit during the pandemic, but I think in the recruitment process, where you can, getting face-to-face with people is massively important. We talk about a new technology being ways that might help to engage people over time, but I still think nothing's ever going to beat the ability to get face-to-face with prospects and them being able to meet you and get to know you, etc. And the final one, I think, native communication. So as I say, I think there's a massive reliance upon email being the way that franchisors try and engage with the contacts, and obviously through the phone as well. But most people now, I don't know about you, but I very rarely, as I say, check my personal email. I'm on WhatsApp, probably more than anything else. There's lots of franchisors now I know are using WhatsApp to follow leads up, dropping a message on WhatsApp, and the engagement rates they instantly get from trying to contact leads on WhatsApp rather than relying on applying to an email address dramatically changes their franchise recruitment process. So really try and think about, of the types of people you're targeting, where do they natively communicate? Probably not via email these days. It might be by Facebook Messenger, it might be WhatsApp, it may be a phone call, but however it is, just try communicating people in those kind of ways. So sorry, that's everything from me. Sorry, Ed, if I went a bit over time.
No, you're good. You made my presentation easier because all I need to say is just do what Adam said. Basically. Julie, do you want to go to questions for Adam first, or my presentation? How do you want to play it?
I think, Ed, if you want to continue with yours, and then I know that you put a question in for Adam in the chat box. If you want to go through yours, and then we'll take questions from everyone at the end.
Yep, sure. No problem at all. Okay. So you should be able to see my screen. Can you see it okay, Julie?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So I guess I wanted to focus in on one area that Adam was talking about there. And I think it's that second pond where people are probably not utilizing that well within the franchising industry. And how do you create that pond? I think Adam talked quite a bit there about kind of some of the posts that might be once people are in your environment and once they're starting to kind of get to know your brand a little bit. But I wanted to kind of take it a step back from there. So I'm going to talk about brand awareness for franchise recruitment on social media and kind of the importance of it. So I wanted to start off this by just getting you to think about this question, or, you know, answer it to yourself. So would you like a list of people that you can market to that you know about your brand, like your brand, and may even trust your brand? If you could have a list of those people, what would it mean for you to be able to market to them? You're going to have a bigger impact, right? You're going to maximize your advertising spend. So having that list of people is would be fantastic, right? And I think you can achieve that through social media. So like I say, I'm going to focus in on this awareness piece. If you've ever sat through any marketing presentation before, you've probably seen this funnel, right? Where people go through all the various stages until they actually purchase. And this is pretty typical, but what I think a lot of people do is they skip this awareness part, that part right at the top. And I think they go straight in for some of those consideration posts where it is, you know, like Adam said, talking about the pain points, which are important and really valuable, but it's that awareness piece. How do you get people to follow you in the first place? That I think is the bit we're missing a little bit in the industry. So why focus in on that brand awareness piece? Well, increased visibility. Some of these are pretty obvious, right? There's 57.6 million users in the UK for social media. That's about 85% of the population. So if you're not on social media and using it for a way to get your brand out there, you know, that's a big opportunity you're missing, I think. It can help you to build trust and credibility. So yeah, by turning up consistently, showing that you know what you're doing and things like this. That's what social media can do, showing the day in the life of stuff that Adam talked about there as well. That's something you can do on social media. It can set you apart from competitors. If you look at your competitors, if they're not doing anything on social media and you're going to be streaks ahead of them, especially if you're putting good content out there and engaging with the people that you're connecting with. can add a layer of validation. So you can actually post out some reviews and testimonials from clients on there. So I think Adam touched on it a little bit there as well. The customer journey or the prospect journey, they're going to go away and do some research, and a lot of people will be going on social media. So if they go on there and see there's an empty page where you hardly ever post, they've got nothing to go on. If they can see you've got stuff on there, you know, stories from your franchisees, success stories, that your network is growing, all those kinds of things, it can add to a layer of validation. But the bit that I really wanted to focus in on is that you can build your own niche audience. You can build that pond that you know is somewhere that you can then go back to and market to, and they're going to be liking, knowing and trusting your brand, which, you know, I know other presentations people have done focusing on that as a big reason why people engage and, you know, buy a franchise with somebody. So Sandra's here today. I wanted to use them as an example because I think she's absolutely smashing it in terms of this brand awareness piece. Now, I want you to take a look at this post here, which she's not used. This is something that I've created just for an example, just for this. So this might be a fairly typical post that you might see go out there from franchise brands. I create top 10s on a weekly basis. So I look, and this is pretty typical to what I see. And it talks about the you know, take control of your future and do something that you love. You know, that kind of messaging is important. But when you're scrolling through, is it necessarily going to make you stop and want to connect with this brand? You might feel like you're going to get sold to because they're talking about their franchise opportunities all the time. So that kind of post is probably not the sort of post that is going to make you stop and connect with that brand and see all their other posts in your feed. However, Sandra posts out stuff like this, which to cat lovers, they're all going to recognize it. If you've got a cat yourself and you've ever tried to give them a pill, it's an absolute mission. You're going to be wrestling with them. So it's something that's relatable, something that's entertaining. It's something that makes me think, okay, if they're putting stuff out there that's like this, I want to see this in my feed. It's making me chuckle. It's giving me something interesting to see in my feed on a daily basis. You don't want sales adverts all the time. So that's something I want you guys to think about really, is when you're creating content for social media, think about what your audience is actually going to be interested in. What are they going to want to follow? Are they going to want to follow a sales advert on a regular basis? Probably not. They're going to want to follow something that's going to give them something that's entertaining, educational, relatable, inspirational, or engaging. So I've been working with Sandra for a little while, and we're starting to take a look at what other people are doing within the social media around cats. And one thing that we've seen has been trending quite a bit is if cats can actually talk, and putting voices to those cats. So we've now started to create these videos, and you can see here there's no sales message at all. It's literally just, here's something that could be quite funny and amusing and entertaining. And you can see the engagement down the bottom here is looking quite good. These are the awareness pieces. So I just wanted to really highlight that. And Sandra's fantastic at doing loads of these. So mute until human woke up, didn't need anything, just bored. Again, really relatable, entertaining. This one here, educational. Cats can tell when a thunderstorm is coming. So it's interesting to cat owners, cat lovers. I was normal 3 cats ago. Again, really relatable stuff. So those kinds of posts are the kind of things that you should be doing, is thinking about what your audience actually is interested in and what they're going to find, useful or valuable to their day. Then you can start to bring in something that is a little more, in my opinion, a gentler approach than the saying, we've got a franchise opportunity. You can start off making your video or your post look very similar to kind of the more entertaining ones. But within here, so we've just taken it from talking about a cardboard box, and a little bit like the Forrest Gump thing, life is like a box of chocolates, life is like a cardboard box. It's what you make of it, basically. And the same could be said for a franchise opportunity. Some people might look at it and think there's no value. Others can see how it could help them to become happy and change something in their life, get in touch. So that is the kind of sales message that we're then kind of taking them through, ideally taking them through that funnel, away from the awareness and interest phase into kind of that consideration step, but in a kind of subtle way that is less aggressive than just the sales message. And this particular post I looked at, I'm showing you because it actually generated not a lead, I wouldn't say, but it's an opportunity to turn somebody into a lead. So a comment there from a lady I think was in Southampton. What is the earning potential, please? So that to me is somebody considering, finding out more about the business, or actually wants to show more. You could even say they're moving into the intent phase, but that's an example of how awareness posts in conjunction with those more kind of consideration posts can actually lead to a potential lead without actually having spent, advertising budget on paid adverts. Now think about the potential when you actually put those types of posts into a paid campaign where you're targeting your followers. The potential is huge, in my opinion. So the Cat Butler, just to give you guys a little bit of an understanding, they have nearly 350,000 followers, and that is down to the work predominantly of Sandra putting out that relatable content. And I advise you to go and have a look. She's absolutely relentless with this. Can you guys still see me, by the way, or is my camera switched off?
No, we can see you, Ed.
Okay, cool.
We can see the presentation. We can't see you.
Okay, I think my camera might have switched itself off or some things, but okay, no worries. I'll carry on. So yes, and you can see the engagement she's getting, the likes, new followers. This is all down to brand awareness, knowing her audience and creating content that they're going to like and want to see on their feed. Now, she's been generating quite a few leads now, not necessarily off the back of this, but that's converted now. I think it's 4 in January in total, or 4 this year anyway, franchisees that are due to sign up. And I don't think that's in any small part down to this audience that she's built, that is UK and international. In fact, actually, I've seen so many comments on some of her content that says, can you come to America, please, as well? So that she's seeing demand in the US. So for me, I think this tactic really works. And with a bit of work at the back end to sort of convert those leads, it's starting to really work, I think, for the Cat Butler. So that's one way you can look at building your audience. There are plenty of other ways on social media, because I know not everybody's creative and has got time to produce loads of content. So I thought I'd share some other ideas. So another thing that you can do is create your own groups that's relevant to your business. But the key thing is, don't use it to sell. So what I mean by this is, take a topic that is going to be useful or interesting to people that engage with your brand. So it could be something along the lines of, let's think of another brand. So well, let's say one of the kids' activities ones. So you could create a mums group for the local community that you want to target to generate franchisees, or I don't know, overarching mums group where you can say to people, here's some useful information about being a mum and how to get your kids ready for their clubs or classes or things like this, right? So just useful bits of information. Other people can chip in, and that group can grow. If you've got your logo attached to it, that's going to bring some form of trust in your brand as well. So creating groups is something really useful to do and think about doing. If that feels like it's too much time, go into other groups and add value. So start to give your advice, educate others on, things that are valuable to that group. So there are already mum groups out there, for example, that you could go into and say, hey, look, this is what we found in our experience works on XYZ topic, or here's 5 tips on, what you could be doing. And that's going to just position you as a thought leader, again, building that trust in your brand. And what people end up doing is when they see these groups and they see you in these groups interacting, is they go and check out your profile page, your personal page, whatever it is that you're putting out there. And that's where that becomes your sales page for them. It becomes your website, and you can actually then start to tell people about the business, and that's where your sales pitch can come in. Connect and engage with others in your industry. So it's likely that there are people with strong personal brands that are influencers. Go and connect with them. Again, do the same thing. Comment on their posts. If people see you turning up on their feed every day because you're commenting on, their favorite influencers' posts every day, again, it's just getting your face out there, your brand out there on a regular basis, building trust. I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but it's really important. And I think these are important ways that you can do it that are free, and 15 minutes every day. It makes a lot of sense, right? To be doing this, to build that pond that you want. So yes, connect with those who like or comment on your posts as well. So I feel like this is an obvious one, but I don't see enough people doing it. If you've posted content out there on your personal page, on your company page, and someone comments it or likes, engage with them, have a conversation with them, reply to that comment. Just drop them a nice little message or direct message saying, thanks so much for engaging in my content. What do you find interesting about XYZ topic, whatever it is that you've discussed in the original post. Those conversations can start to build relationships, which further on down the line, once they start to become more curious about who you are and what you're doing, can turn into, if it's the right time for them, the potential for them to become a prospect for your franchise. So there's so many different angles. It's free to do all these things as well, which I think is really important. But building that second pond just gives you so many opportunities to find people that are really relevant to your brand. So now you have that niche audience that knows about your business and franchise, likes the way you operate, trusts your business as a market leader. I'm not going to kind of go over it again because I think Adam covered it there, but you can then drop in those consideration posts that are going to help them to convert, going to talk to them about that pain point that they're experiencing and to convert them into a prospect, hopefully. But the other thing is, I talked about it briefly, the validation piece. The prospects can also see that the cat butler, for example, knows what it's like to be a cat owner, has built-in potential client base because they can see that they've got 350,000 followers. But they can also see they know how to market the business. So all these validation points add up as well. So creating that type of content, I think, has a potential for a massive impact on your business in the long run. So that's pretty much it. Just a little bit about me. So I created a business called The Franchised, and the reason I created it is to educate the world on franchising as an option for their career. I do this by helping brands to get their word out there, basically, and promote their franchise opportunity. I do that through creating content predominantly. You can see all the bits there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Right, great. Wow. Honestly, seriously, Adam, Ed, there was just so much amazing, valuable content in there. It's like, where do we start? And I think, again, just for the benefit of everyone on the call, we are recording it. It will be available. You don't have to make notes. We'll send you a link to the recording, and then you can watch it again and again and again, because there is so much really great stuff in there for everyone to learn from. And just to start to open up to the floor, I think, Simon, you popped the first question in the chat box. So if I can ask you to ask away.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm just interested. In your experience, Adam, Ed, what is the current cost per deal in UK franchising? Cost per deal, not cost per lead. But what sort of numbers are we looking at? Because anecdotally, it's been around $10,000 or $25,000 in the States. But what does your empirical evidence tell you?
It varies so much per sector that I think it's really difficult to put a figure on it. I would say it goes back to how many leads you need to get a franchisee, which I think changes all the time. Like it used to be 100 to 1 was like the go-to figure, wasn't it? Well, I think it's a lot less than that now, just because lead generation is harder, and a lot of people looking at the franchise may not actually become a lead until a lot later in the process. That's not really answering the question, is it?
Because you could argue that the more targeted, if you follow your advice in terms of target marketing, you're going to need less leads to get the deal, and that's the point, isn't it? It's more precise, it's more targeted. But I just it's a really useful benchmark, particularly for people coming into franchising, because I think one of the things that they don't appreciate is the costs associated with recruitment, and I think it's really important that we keep on top of that and see where we're at in the process, because people will come to the table with a business plan, and I've seen them that say we're going to recruit 150 franchisees in the first year, and we've got a 10 grand marketing fund. It's not going to work, is it?
No, I mean, I still think if you're looking at the cost per lead as a benchmark, I think £35 is about a benchmark figure, and then you can work out how many leads you need to recruit a franchisee to give you an advertising cost, but that's just advertising cost, isn't it? Obviously, that's not taking in the associated cost of who's following up the leads, who's doing the adverts, etc. But I think that £35 a lead's always been a roundabout right, but again, it changes massively per sector.
Yeah, and I think again, Simon, from my point of view, in terms of general experience, there's a trade-off between time and money, and if you from Sandra's point of view, Sandra's put a huge amount of time into it, and Ed's put a huge amount of time into it as well. Whereas other people will go and stand on an exhibition stand and pay the money to do that for various different reasons, basically. So it's hard work, and you've got to get it right at every stage. And again, hopefully, the experience that Sandra's got and the people that she's working with, she's got it right, and she's got the answers to all the questions that people could ever ask, because that's really important as well.
Julie, just to echo that. So in the past, I've generated leads that are 40 pence per lead, and the trade-off for that was time. So we had 2 people working on those leads, right? Because of the volume we had come through, and they weren't all high quality, but it was a route that probably produced the most recruits for us. And this is, by the way, this is not me and Sandra, this is with a different business that I was working with. But then we also generated leads that were, more like 35, 50 pounds. But there's fewer of them, and they took less time to convert. I think Adam mentioned it earlier as well. It's very difficult. I think everyone's got a different strategy. You've just got to test out every area you can, and then find what works for you. But I'm a strong believer that in the meantime, build that brand, build that other pond for yourself, because in the long run, it will maximize your spend.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, sorry, just if I may ask, do you think you're leveraging enough from those Facebook followers? I mean, 350,000, which gave 4 new franchisees. Do you think you're leveraging enough of that audience, or is there a lot more work to be done?
It's going to be a longer term project. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. It's the long game. Ultimately, it's not going to get people instantly, because you've got to educate along the way. And I think there's probably some more work to do, and it's difficult to track all the time where if they've seen you there first or somewhere else. And there's always more work to do, right?
Ed, I think the really interesting thing about those posts that you put up from the Cat Butler was the number of shares that were on there. Some of those posts were shared 20 and 30 times. And again, Sandra's gone from 5,000 following to 350,000 following in maybe 3.5 years. If you continue that trajectory, like where is she going to be this time next year, basically?
So the ones that I shared there, they're probably nowhere near like the biggest impact ones that you're getting, are they, Sandra? There's some that are hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, amazing. Anyway, Tim, there was a question from you, Tim Morris, who's on mute.
There we go. Yeah, I was really interested to get some thoughts on the brands who are more established and are having, I suspect that across the sector there's this challenge because as we've seen, Adam, the search of franchise opportunities has declined over the years and continues to do so. But how would you see a established corporate brand switching to create personal branding? I mean, I think I absolutely agree. I believe that that's the way we've got to go now. The sector's got to go. But for the established brands, how do you think that could work?
Just getting started with it. I know that sounds really simple, but I think ultimately personal branding is a leap of faith, isn't it? What holds people back is that they don't want to necessarily put themselves out there on video content or whatever it may be.
No, I agree with that, but with your established brands, with a head office of 15, 16 people, somebody's got to be willing to take that on, and that's where I was, if there are any, because all of the brands, everybody has this aspiration to grow, and that means growing your home office or head office team. And I'm just trying to figure out in my mind how that would, and I'm not in any way suggesting that it can't work. It's figuring out a solution as to how to make it work, because I absolutely bang on agree that this is a very personal thing.
I think it's about the culture of the business at the end of the day. If everyone's bought into the reason why your business is doing what it's doing, you're more likely to be able to encourage them to help by explaining, by you being out there, this is going to help us to do more of this, which is then going to allow, us to achieve our goal. So that's going to help people feel more likely like they're gonna video themselves or put a picture out of themselves. But the other thing you can do is kind of incentivize it to some degree, run competitions, say, everyone this month, I'd like you to create, 1 or 2 videos that shows why you love working at this business, and the winner gets a weekend somewhere or whatever it may be, right? So that's just one example of an idea you could do that then means that your staff are out there creating and posting content without you having to come up with all of the different ideas. But then you can use that from your company page as well and say, look at what our staff think of working here. It's a big culture shift. But if you've got the right people on board who are bought into it, I think if you kind of explain it to them, bring somebody on who can explain it to them why it's important to do this.
Yeah, I think it is. It feels like it's a really big project because, and again, not trying to dampen it at all, because I think it's absolutely vital. But if you take somebody like Ryan, who's building Teslom, and also Sandra, on the back of really good quality personal branding and use of social media, that's his personal passion as well. So to bring that into a bigger business, and it has to be a team thing, doesn't it? Because if you give it to somebody and that person builds their brand and then they choose to leave the business, that causes.
He's leading by example. There's
KFC,
people in there that don't. There's people in there that don't enjoy being on camera in his team, and they're doing it because he's showing them the way, and they all buy into the business.
Yeah,
they've got the culture.
Tim, I think KFC have been doing it for years. Colonel Sanders is still the face of KFC. It's still it's still the brand story, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's telling a brand story.
Yeah,
and they're even using it today because they know that people really empathise with Colonel Sanders and where he came from and how he, and that's why people love the brand. And I think Adam's exactly right. There's not enough storytelling, or for me, there's a fine line between personal branding and egotistical maniacs, if you like. I think you've got to be a little bit careful, particularly in franchising, where we've seen in the past where networks have been built around a single personality, and that individual has gone on to do things that haven't been particularly good for the brand, I guess. But yeah, I think big corporations still do it well, and KFC is a great example of that. They never forget about their brand story and where they've come from.
And I think within the franchise sector, Tim, if you look at Nigel Topless, the Barden Group, the Barden Group is one of the biggest franchisors in the UK, and Nigel's been around in franchising for many years, and he uses particularly LinkedIn very effectively. And I've known Nigel for many years, but I didn't know he had a home in South Africa. I didn't know he was a lover of elephants. He also gets across his passion for communication and franchising and support. And anyone that sees those posts can't fail to understand his personal values, which are very much, embedded in the business, basically.
Yeah, great shout, great example.
Laura, we've got a comment question from you in the chat box. Laura Greenwood, if you'd like to expand, read, comment on it, if that's okay.
And need that, because the franchisees that you recruit need that support. But you also, I believe, should be pursuing a target or targeted franchisees that would work best with you. So I think you've got to do that as well as that audience building, and be particular and put as much work into that.
Yeah, you're talking about sort of an avatar, Laura, in terms of.
Yeah, if your franchise is like maybe a side hustle potentially for somebody, who is it a potential side hustle for? Do you know what I mean? And I think you've got to go out and you've got to pursue and find those people and find that tribe, because they need different stuff. They're looking for something that earns them money, as well as and I think it's a double-edged sword and a different vertical than your brand building.
I think the profiles are massively I think if you're trying to build that secondary pond, you have to really know the profile people you're trying to target. But the most important thing is not just the profile. So it's not like gender, age, likes, interests. It's the pain points they have that will drive them to look to invest in a franchise. It's the pain points of the profile, which is the absolute key element. So when you build those profiles, really try and think about what is it in their lives that they desperately need to change, which would drive them to even think about investing in the franchise. And once you know that and start to understand it, that becomes your marketing message. I think that's the key part of it.
Yeah, I think, I'm saying though, I think you should be going out to actively look for them rather than just hoping that you'll come across them.
Yeah, well, once you know that, obviously, then your marketing, 100% will go out to try and generate interest from those audiences.
Yeah,
I've actually done that through headhunting on LinkedIn before for a brand, but you can do it on Facebook. So with those 350,000 followers, within that, not every single one of them are going to be your ideal avatar. But when you put in a paid campaign, it's going to bring it down to let's say 2,000 people across the UK that are going to fit your parameters, and you can kind of then go and approach them directly with a more focused sales message. So to me, it makes sense to have that there first, or as you're building and growing, and then go back and target them directly. It's easier than just drawing up a random list of people that kind of fit in there. At least you know this lot love your brand. Yeah,
and I think the other point was obviously that is that as brand followers, hopefully they're going to be interested in buying your service at some point as well. So it's very much a dual-edged sword, isn't it? Okay, anyone want one final question before we call a close, or have we all asked the questions that we want to ask from our guests today? Any hands going up? Okay.
Julie, I've got a question for Adam, really, and that was just with social media platforms like TikTok now turning into kind of search engines. Do you think that that's going to have an impact on those Google figures that you mentioned, and ChatGPT as well? People could actually go in there and search for 10 brands, couldn't they? So do you think that'll have an impact?
I don't think it'll have an impact in 2023, but I think if you're fast forwarding a few years, the whole world of search is going to be different, isn't it? And if Google don't start catching up with the AI world, then they're going to be in a bit of trouble. But yeah, I think, fast forward 10 years, and I think we'll all have a voice assistant that will probably know us so well and know franchising so well and use AI that we'll rely on that for recommendations. Like, it's scary, but that's probably the way the world will go in the end. So yeah, so I don't think it impacts now, but it's definitely going to. And I think if any brands can start finding ways to be found through search outside of Google now, then that can only be a good thing.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. And just to finish off, so thanks for the super guests that we've had today, Adam and Ed, and the contact details for both of them are there on the screen, and obviously through LinkedIn, etc. The next event in March, we're talking about legal updates for 2023, and Natalia, who's been on the call today from Beyond Corporate Law, is going to be sharing her thoughts and current views in terms of what's happening in the franchising world from a legal point of view. So we'll be sending information out about that again within the next week or so. And as mentioned, the recording will be put onto the website for people to view in the future. So that just means me to thank everyone for attending. It's been a really good turnout. Hopefully everyone's found it as beneficial and useful as I have. And we'll see you all again next month, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for your time, everyone. Have a good day.
Cheers.